Slavic Connection.
Thank you.
Today we have with us Nathan Stone. Welcome to the show.
My pleasure.
How you
nice
doing?
To be here. Yeah, I'm
Doing
great.
well?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So this is going to be less Slavic, I assume, than our average episode.
Okay.
Which is good. It's a good thing.
Uh-huh.
You're an expert in South America and Chile, to be specific.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't you tell us how you got to University of Texas? You're in the second year of your history PhD.
Mm-hmm.
I know that was a long road. If you could give us a bumper sticker instead of
Sure.
an itinerary.
Sure. Well, it's actually my second round at UT because I was here in '86 doing Masters in English, but I had to go back to Chile because we had to throw Pinochet out.
They called you up.
Yeah, they called me up. I had to show up. It was like the right time. So I came back 30 years later, and I didn't realize I was reapplying. And I still have grades from back then that figure in and stuff like that. And it's actually my third time because I went to grammar school across Guadalupe at St. Austin's. Yeah,
Gotcha.
I learned to read blocks away from here.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I'm a third time around guy here.
Third time's a charm.
Yeah, third time's the charm.
So where, in between those efforts, where did you find yourself in the world?
Okay, well, we left Austin about '68, I guess it was, and we were here for like most of like the civil rights era,
Mm-hmm.
and actually right when UT was admitting non-white Texans for the first time,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
A radical move
Yes,
in
very
Texas.
radical back then. And we went to Houston. I did all my high school in Houston and went to Notre Dame. Survived Notre Dame. And they had like a program you could go and volunteer in Chile for 2.5 years. And
Was this like a Peace Corps type thing? Or?
well, it's kind of a Peace Corps type thing.
Notre Dame branded
Notre
Peace
Dame
Corps?
branded Peace Corps.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So we taught in poor schools and lived in poor neighborhoods and all that, and we did the poor lifestyle, you know,
Mhm.
and there was plenty of it because
Right.
then it was like right when they took let the bottom drop out of the economy, and so it was like 40% unemployment.
Mhm.
And, you know, rickety buses and all
Sure.
that, you know.
So it was really an opportunity that brought you to Chile. Or were you always interested in the region, or was it just this program was too good to pass on?
Well, Chile itself, the program is too good to pass. I was always interested in Latin America, and you know, my Spanish was pretty Mexican then. My dad grew up on the border.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, and so I always considered Texas pretty bilingual. But then when you get to Chile, and you don't talk like us, and I don't speak like a Chilean. So now they find me like kind of foreign South American here, the way I speak Spanish.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what would you find yourself doing? Were you teaching? Were you volunteering? Working farms? What was...
Yeah, well, we had to like live on our wages, and they were really meager. But there were 4 of us, and we taught school during the day, and then like nighttime we would just like, you know, stir up trouble in the neighborhood, you know. So yeah, it was participating in like youth groups and stuff like that, and because that was our age group
Right.
too, and it was like as one more, like, you know, to share the road sort of thing.
This is a post-Pinochet period. So...
No, that was during Pinochet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Excuse me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Post-revolution or coup.
Post
period.
Allende, yeah.
Yes.
The coup's in '73. We got there in '79, which is, I guess, that was Carter administration. Yeah, and the worst of the human rights violation stuff had like toned down.
Mm-hmm. It was right after he came into power. That was the worst.
Yeah, like
kind of-
'73 to '76, and they kind of made him tone it down after they killed the guy in Washington, Orlando Letelier.
Mhm.
The Chilean secret police organized this thing, put a car bomb under a former foreign minister in Washington, and they killed people in Buenos Aires, and they tried to kill a guy in Rome and all. And so the State Department was like not too happy about this.
No, nor should they.
No, but Pinochet was their boy, and so they got.
And when you say they there, you mean the American government? They made him tone it down.
Yeah, because he was like the strategic ally. That's the year Kissinger went and was in all the pictures with him and stuff like that. Yeah. So, but so it settled, but it was still sort of dangerous. You still had like neighbors who would inform on you
Right.
and things like that, and things that you had to be careful going to, and they would take your picture, you know.
So sort of Soviet-style governance in a way. I mean,
Yeah, they probably weren't as good at it, but
Mhm.
they had lots of like, you know, they kept files on people, and they were all these
Right.
paper files,
Mhm.
and you had to like go in and report if you moved and stuff like that. So you had all these police guys who like, you know, come in, because there was the police and then there's the detectives and then there's the secret police. So like the best of them got to be the secret police, but that in-between guys, those were the detectives, so they didn't wear uniforms.
Mhm.
They would wear like suits that would be like a little bit too small, like their white socks would be shown like this, and she's like, well, I can't move, so what, my new dress is this, and they typing it out with 2 fingers on a, you know, a note card, like, and it comes off the edge, and then they file it in alphabetical order with their Monday morning hangover, and I'm sure a lot of
Right.
people didn't die because their card got lost in alphabetical order, it's too much of it.
That sounds very Stasi-like. so-
Yeah, well, it kind of modeled on that,
Mhm.
but they just weren't as good at it.
Right.
Because like the Germans are Germans about that, you know.
You know, we can praise the Soviet Union for its efficiency in putting
Uh-huh.
people in prison. It was
Yeah, they were
impressive.
very good at that, yeah.
You know, we should point out though, this is a very far-right regime. This is
Oh.
not communist in any way, shape, or form.
No, it was very anti-communist.
Right.
The coup in '73 was to throw out the democratically elected Socialist Coalition of Salvador Allende, which included Communist Party members. And it was, the Chilean Communist Party was like, it was considered the most orthodox Soviet Communist Party in Latin America.
So what does that mean exactly? Like they were quoting Lenin in speeches, like they are...
As much as they could,
Mhm.
and they actually say, okay, we're going to have like this democratic decision that we'll talk about it and be very consistent with it. And so the orders from Moscow are that we should decide this.
So there was communication.
Oh yeah, there was, and a lot of times it would be on like shortwave radio.
Mhm.
So it was called Radio Moscú, and so it's like radio for Europe, but they were
Mhm.
translating in Spanish to Chile, and they would like codify the orders. And so the party members, and of course it was all clandestine by then. They'd been a ruling party after '73. They kind of cropped the top off of it, but there was a lot of Communist Party members. There was like other leftist groups that were like more vanguard, like more Guevarista, they would kind of Cubanoid, but there were fewer of them, and they had pretty much really disappeared. But there were too many Communist Party members, and they've been there for like since the 20s. They were the union guys,
Right.
So if you
Yeah.
belonged to a union, you did, and the Soviet Union was always like, no, it's not time for revolution. It's not, and it also meant that they didn't want any trouble, in a region that wasn't there. But they were really the most orthodox, and it's kind of a really Chilean thing too. It's the only place in the world where you can get orthodox Freudian psychoanalysis from 1890, like just by the book Freud, because they like, no, it's been set in stone, that's the way it is. So it's hard because Chile is like traditionally very isolated.
Right.
Yeah, it's like huge mountains on one side, huge ocean on the other, South Pole, and a desert, and so now there's internet, but there's still kind of a mentality.
Yeah, it's still sort of a toothpick.
Yes, aimed at the heart of
Antarctica. As Kissinger would say.
As Kissinger would say, yeah.
And so you coming to that country in a very fascist era as an American, how were you initially received? I mean, I assume you were not wearing an American flag, saying the Pledge of Allegiance when you got there, but were people critical of you? Were they skeptical of you?
Well, they had reasons to be, and there would be people that like wouldn't deal with us at all.
Mm-hmm.
And it was largely because Peace Corps volunteers in earlier periods had been like double agents, they'd been like CIA, and so there was kind of a distrust probably in the far left militant sort of people.
Right.
But the other things, like we were like really young, like I was 21, looked 17, and so it's like this can't.
He's not the CIA type.
Yeah. We had to get like our degrees authorized in order to teach in Chilean schools, and you had to go by the American embassy, the cultural attaché. They put a stamp on it and said like the place you went is a real university. You didn't make it up. And so the guy who had all the cultural attachés in the Chile North American, said those are all like hotbeds, like they're fake positions. And so the guy that stamped said, wait, and I went with one of my housemates, and the other two went at different times. Said, well, you should come by and talk to us like once a month, and like let us know what you're seeing. And like, oh, okay, sure we will. And no, we hit the door, never came back. Of course, back then nobody had even telephones, not cell phones. So you could you hit the street, it was pretty easy to kind of lose yourself. But it's interesting to think that the people in charge of it, in funneling intelligence, and like these documents that we historians look at and say, aha, I found it, it's in the CIA report. But their information is really sketchy.
Coming from the 17-year-old, 20,
And if we didn't give it to them, which we didn't, they didn't have any information that didn't come from their little circles. And like, okay, so who were their friends? So they had this like real limited sort of worldview, and that's our official documents. So they were distrustful, maybe because of like that kind of anti-American feeling. But we were young. We kind of. There's also a thing on the left too, especially like in El Pueblo, poor people that they kind of have this idea that you must be El Pueblo in the United States too, especially if you come here and don't hang out in Providencia, which is like Ridgetown. So they think that people in the United States are aware of being oppressed workers. They thought this back then. Of course, now it's different world. But like, there's this consciousness of being these oppressed workers, and we're waiting for our revolution too. So they figure like you're our allies from the bottom, the lower rungs of.
Little did they know you were a double agent the whole time.
Yeah, triple. I could have been, but I really wasn't.
And so, how did the country change over the time you were there, post Pinochet?
Oh.
How did they view you? How is communism? So that's a huge question.
Well, communism is really passé. People still get really hot about it. You don't know how it was. We had to stand in line and all that to buy stuff, and of course a lot of that was economic sabotage. Financed by the CIA and all that. They financed a trucker strike. There were some supply issues because when poor people have money, they buy food, and instead of just doing without.
Right.
But they financed a trucker strike, so like the day after the coup, all the shops are full. Well, the food was there, So
the supply window on a grocery store is like 24 hours. I think.
Yeah.
If you don't have trucks, it's just going to be empty.
Yeah, well, and all the truckers were like the Pinochet supporters, and still are, strangely. So that was, and the students there were kind of funny because in the Russian history class we were talking about how in the Soviet Union people would make jokes about, well, what are we standing in line for? I don't know, but it must be good because the line's pretty long. Well, in Chile, students, like university students, would just make a line. Well, nothing was, like nobody was going to sell any toothpaste or toilet paper or anything. And then the guys that made the line would just leave and see how long the line would stay.
That was like their form of ironic protest, sort of.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And so are you planning on going back anytime soon, or what's your relationship with the country now?
Well, I have to go back at least once a year because I have permanent residence status there.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, so
is it a tax reason? Is that it?
Well, it's sort of like a tax reason, but I'll lose my residence, and the residence is really good because I could go, live, work, buy, sell. I can do anything but be president.
Right.
With resident status, I can even vote.
Really?
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Which I don't think you're supposed to, like the United States doesn't want you voting in other places, but I can. And I had that in Brazil too, and they were really hard to get, yeah. So Brazil only requires me to show up once every 2 years, but there's no exception. Chile has an exception. You can drive to Houston and pay the consul $100 and fill out some forms and cry, and they'll give you a year's stay.
It's always a good talent.
Yeah. So and it's fun. I have to keep my old ID card up to date, and I think I've got an expired one with me. I take it out for a Spanish class to prove to people that you have a second last name in Spanish. That's your mother's maiden name.
Oh, okay. Well, we look on the website maybe.
Yeah.
So how do you see the future of Chile in terms of on its own and American relations, or?
Well, it's...
Who do you see them, well, I guess a better question, like what model do you see them following? Are they looking to South America? Are they looking to Europe?
Well, the coup, and this is like how successful Pinochet was in a tragic sort of way.
Right.
It was to remake the economy in a real neoliberal model.
Mm-hmm.
And this was the period of Reagan and Margaret Thatcher and free market economics, and like let all the local business go bankrupt and compete in a world, in a global market.
Open the market.
Yeah, open the market. And so a lot of businesses went under, and that was like when we first got there, when people were like souls, they were hungry poor. And it was like, that's kind of how Peru and Bolivia were to the Chileans before. Chile was always a little bit more prosperous, wealthier, a little better educated, poor people could all read in Chile and stuff like that. So it kind of really hit a rock in a hard place, but right then. And then started coming back as this neoliberal model sort of place, and supplying raw materials, because Chile is like completely copper dependent. Even now, like you say, oh, here's this great Chilean wine, these great Chilean avocados, great Chilean fruit, and it comes in the off season because their growing season is the other way around.
Right.
So it's like this great advantage, like for HEB and stuff like that. But it really still is just a fraction of it's just copper, and so there's a lot of the very old colonial model. You're exporting raw materials, and as long as the price is up, you're doing fine. And when the price bottoms out, it's like, well, raise the price on the wine or something, and get by. So, and in a sense, it's I have an expression: pan para hoy, hambre para mañana, bread for today and hunger for tomorrow. Because a mineral resource, it will run out, and the price will fluctuate. And say, oh, we'll export lithium, and boron. The north is this complete desert. It's a really amazing place, but it's full of all these like wildly toxic minerals.
The hospitable areas are pretty small. In the country as a whole.
Yeah. Well, the south has some really beautiful green places, look like Switzerland.
Well, it's a gorgeous country.
Yeah.
Actually,
And in the north is like, there's places where like it never rains, never ever, that kind of thing. And that's where all the minerals are. And then there's indigenous communities that've been there forever, and they live in like little oases and stuff like that. But they're extremely vulnerable. If you put in like a great big machine to start digging stuff out of the ground, you're killing them.
Right.
So it's they're kind of, well, look how modern we are. We have cell phones now too, and we have the best internet in the area, and they don't have the best internet often in the desert, but it's much better internet than in the middle of the Amazon. I'll tell you that for sure. But
and do you think, the problems that Chile is facing are similar to those of Brazil? Brazil's had mass corruption. Obviously, the current president's under a lot of scrutiny from the rest of the world, besides our president, of course.
Oh, yeah. No, it's completely different from Brazil in lots of ways. And one of the things is like the whole free trade thing. It's kind of the western coast of Latin America, and I follow the Chilean lead. And that's all based on Chicago School Economics. They called them the Chicago boys, the Friedman guys, and supply side, and just very basic school of economics. The Atlantic coast remained, and to this day, very protectionist. And Brazil has a lot of pretty good local industry.
Sure.
The best cutlery in the world comes from there, and they make pretty good cars and stuff like that. But they are protectionist, and they have a kind of a long old tradition of those who govern have a right to skim 20% off the top.
Yeah.
So the thing that, like the kind of the shocker of the car wash scandal in Brazil was that it wasn't 20%, it was like 300%, like, you know.
Making it money just getting
Oh,
top.
yeah. And it was like, it wasn't like, oh, there are corrupt people. It's like, no, it's a corrupt system,
Yes,
you know,
right.
and if you don't get corrupt with it, your airplane's gonna fall out of the sky,
Mhm.
you know? And so, and that stuff was real, so it's not like corruption is tolerated. No, corruption is the system. If you're gonna be part of it, you have to be on the take, because that's the only way you'll keep quiet, you know?
Yeah.
And so you get this whole thing that like, they'll say Americans don't have like the tolerance for ambiguity to in Uruguay, they're really got like tolerance for ambiguity. They say cintura. It's like, tiene que tener cintura, and that means you gotta have a flexible waist, and it's like a dancing model, you know? You're able to like to kind of work your way through here without getting mad or getting everybody mad. But in Uruguay, they're a little bit more sensible about like their corruptions and stuff, because like if you kill the goose that lays the golden eggs, then there's no more golden eggs. So it's like you got to keep it alive, you know. But in Brazil,
Are they protectionists as well? On the,
yeah, they are. And Uruguay is a very unique South American country because it's like 90% European.
Sure.
Yeah. Buenos Aires is like that. Argentina is not the rest of Argentina. It's more like the rest of South America.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting seeing their soccer players come over and they look like Italians or French players.
Well,
they don't,
and you look at their last names,
Right.
you know, and what they eat.
Diego Forlan.
Yeah.
That could be from, I don't know,
Yeah.
Portugal, he could be from France, I don't know.
Well, and Sunday dinner in Montevideo, it's Italian. It's like
Right.
the best Italian food in the world.
The best Italian food is often outside Italy. And so tell me, what is sort of the conclusion of your research going to look like? Well, that's a loaded question.
Yeah.
Where do you see your research going? What does it look like right now? What might it look like?
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about working on the indigenous question about, you know, indigenous lands and stuff like that. But it's a huge question and super loaded, and it like require lots of field work and learning languages and getting the confidence. You know, it's a you should really start that when you're 23, and you maybe like with 10
I'm
guys.
sure you experience it when you're 23 at least.
Because it's hard to like get the real scoop from the indigenous people until you're one of them. So you
Right.
have to stay long enough until they like make you their brother-in-law or something like that. Whereas, and I was like only there for a few years, you know, and I learned Portuguese pretty well, but I didn't learn many indigenous words, and there are 180 surviving groups. And they are taking their land away. You could study the legal aspects of that, and that might do that later.
There's about a 20-year of research for every article published ratio.
Yeah.
It's not a cash cow.
Yeah, and the best books are people that, you know, started going to some place, and the anthropology model.
Yeah,
you know.
of course.
So the historiography, and if you just go to the historiography, you get these kind of archival accounts.
Is there a lot of Mormons, right? But isn't that going to work?
I didn't see many Mormons in the indigenous areas. There are evangelicals.
Okay.
And it's kind of funny because there's this agency that's like supposed to be like the intermediate with indigenous groups, and they try to keep the evangelical missionaries out of the indigenous territory because they would encourage the people to sell their land and work for a salary for a landowner, because that's what, you know, evangelical Jesus wants them to do, like make money and spend it. And they don't have a moneyed economy. Their subsistence.
That doesn't mean anything.
It doesn't mean anything.
I was there, yeah. There's that De Niro, Liam Neeson movie from the 80s, I can't remember.
Oh, The Mission.
Yes, of course.
And those guys, those are supposed to be Guarani, but the Indians that they filmed it among are Yanomami.
You're saying Hollywood got something, a delicate political thing wrong?
Oh, yeah. Well, the Guarani, Paraguay is a Guarani republic. They still speak Guarani. It's very adapted to their own version of modernity. It takes forever to get anything done in Paraguay, and they're just not in a hurry. And,
Sure.
And it's a very tall Indian, the Guarani, and very cultured and very well adapted to kind of their version of Western way. The Yanomami are like uncontacted, so they had to find someone who's like uncontacted to represent it, but they're like squattier and stuff. Like they don't look like what I need at all.
They don't have the Hollywood idea.
No.
Indian looks like.
No.
And so, I mean, is the indigenous, I mean, it feels strange even saying like the indigenous question, because that's even, I think of America in the 60s, they would say like the black question.
Mhm.
It's like, that's just like a horrible way to frame it. I mean, is it this sort of like political football that is tossed back and forth between groups and they say, no, we'll help them, but no one does anything, or is it not even discussed?
Well, in Brazil, about 88, when they made the new constitution after their 25
Their
years of
sixth
military
constitution
reign,
of the century, yeah.
they included an article, 291, I think it is. It's a page. I did a workshop on it in indigenous.
You could have said any number.
Yeah, it's just a page, and it kind of guarantees the rights of the indigenous communities, and like in perpetuity, and like exclusive use of all their ancestral lands and whatnot. And it has to be demarcated and fenced and declared by the Supreme Court, and it had to be done in 5 years, like get it done and in perpetuity and all that stuff. Well, since 88, what's that, like more than 30 years have gone by, only a third of it has been like declared, and they're backtracking on it. It's like rice farmers come and say, well, I could make that land productive, and like, so, and there are clauses in there, and this was the thing that we were helping with this workshop, like, wait a minute, but that clause could, because it says like, if it's like, only for reasons of like national security, the common good of the Brazilian nation, well, that could be a rice farm.
Sure.
And sometimes I'm going to make money for Brazil, and rice farms are going, and one of the reasons that rice farms and soybean farms are going in the Amazon backwoods is because we're doing sustainable fuel.
Where?
In
America
the United
or?
States.
Okay.
The Midwestern corn is going into the gas tank. And they're putting more acreage in corn that used to be in soybeans that we used to sell to the Chinese. The Chinese eat soybeans. So who's putting the soybeans now? The Brazilians. They're mowing down the forest, and well, if that piece of forest belongs to the indigenous community, then it's for the common good of the nation.
It's national security.
Yeah. A lot of these are on borders too. It's like the Yanomami are on a border with Venezuela, they're partly in Venezuela. So they can say, okay, there's a security problem with Venezuela, we're going to invade. If there's an epidemic, and the first thing that happens, especially on uncontacted indigenous community, white people go there, everybody gets sick.
Yeah.
Like you can't go if you got the flu and stuff like that. So there's a lot of backtrack on it. And they're still like activists, and they're getting a little old, and the indigenous communities themselves are doing a much better job of representing themselves.
Having a more political output.
Yeah, they kind of know what to do, where to go, what to say, and that's probably the best of it, because it's sort of paternalist. If some
Sure.
Lawyers from New York are doing it for them, or like nuns in Manaus, that doesn't really. It's still like, who's going to help me sort of model, and then but the real problem is one of the best communities they got out their long spears, they use these long sharpened spears. Texaco's not coming down our road, and because Texaco didn't come down the road,
Yeah.
they turned around and went the other way. It wasn't worth it to them. So it was like bad for business. So but it's a real fascinating topic, but it's I probably have more like on the ground knowledge with like this huge cultural change in Chile as a consequence of the dictatorship. Because right now, and it used to be, look at like Chilean novels from a century ago, and they would be like European looking, or like kind of regional, Argentina, Peru, Chile, kind of a consciousness of that. And the name of Chile, like in the colonial years, was called La Nueva Extremadura, because there was a region in Spain called Extremadura, which means the end of the world. Okay, so Chile was the new end of the world. Okay, but they were like, young people with money, aristocrats would finish their education by going to Paris and like tour Europe for a year, but buy furniture in Paris and stuff. So it was European looking. After Pinochet, it's not just United States looking, it's Disneyland looking. It's
Really?
like, yeah, it's like, we went to
like
Disneyland.
Epcot, like
Epcot,
yeah.
the whole shot. You know, places I've never been, but it's like,
Sure.
it becomes like this. You know, we're there. We've been to Disney.
Mhm.
You know, and kind of, you know, bringing back technology and stuff like that. And now there's more and more like. People are better at technology than I am because I'm
Sure.
just, you know, too old to know how to do stuff. You know.
Well, you get your posts in time on our survey class. I think your technology's fine.
Yeah, I'm, you know, I can survive, but like, the Chile new generation, but they're very much like looking at the world kind of from American point of view.
Mhm.
You know, like, oh, we could all be driving cars. Well, guess what? When you all drive cars, your city turns into a huge traffic jam. And they're just discovering that, you know. They just started smoking big time, like in the 60s and 70s, so they're like, the older generation is just now getting lung cancer. You know,
Right.
and so they're just now quitting, but stuff like that.
That reminds me of Russia a little bit. It seems like a lot of their cultural movements are like 10, 15 years behind the US.
Uh-huh.
If you hear their rock bands, like they're still kind of hitting the same chords that you heard in the early 2000s.
Kind of, yeah, the Clash and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah. The Clash came in the early 90s.
Well, we had some interesting immigration from the former Soviet Union, like right after it collapsed, and athletic coaches.
In Chile.
Yeah. So the track coaches, because like, oh, you know, Chile is going to be modern. We're going to, you know, compete and all that business. We got to win us some Olympic medals and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And they did win a couple of like tennis medals and all at once, and maybe a swimming medal, a gymnastics medal. But the kid that won the gymnastics medal, he trained with the Cubans.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and he went and got himself a Cuban trainer because he knew he wasn't going to go anywhere with Chilean training. Well, they brought some Russian track and field coaches. And he was like, well, you know, they get the gold medals. But what they didn't understand, like, because they were used to, like, okay, they would get, like, 100 of the best kids, like, the best talent. Like, okay, if one of them survived the training and got the medal, then they goals were accomplished. But in Chile, it was like, okay, who does track and field? Well, rich kids.
Right.
It's like, think of it as like soccer moms are bringing these kids, like, they want all of their kids to get the gold medal, of course. It's like, and none of them to ever get hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there's like this whole bit, it's like, wait a minute, you got to redesign the training so the kid survives, you know. Cause
Yeah, that was never a big interest in the
it wasn't.
USSR.
It's like, no, it's like, this is for Mother Russia, this is not for your mom. No, but in Chile, it's for your mom. And prestige and all that business. And they were funny too because they drank all day. You know, Chileans drink all night, but these guys are like in the morning, like it's cold, like so they have to go into the,
Sure.
like, the office and then come back out. And they were fine because they've been doing it like forever. But it was a kind of, actually the best skills, like athletic skills, came from Cuba, and not from Cubans, because the guys would go to Cuba and learn how to coach that way.
Mhm.
So he did a lot of like really innovative
Interesting.
stuff. Yeah, like innovative Cuban medicine too. That, things that in profit-driven systems people don't do,
Mm-hmm.
and Cubans like, well, try it. So they're really good at like preventive medicine. and stuff
Experimental
like
type
that.
stuff.
Yeah.
So there's always that good relationship with the communist countries post-Pinochet.
Well, once Pinochet's gone, it becomes like possible,
Mm-hmm.
you know, in ways that it's not possible for Americans, because it's like, you know, you'll lose the Florida vote and the presidency and all that stuff. And a lot of mad people in Miami, so you got, you know, but in Chile, like Cuba, well, it's not that directly lined up with, you know, there were some connections, but even like during the Allende years, he was,
And what years were those?
those were 70 to 73.
Okay, right. Oh, so he was a social democrat, or
Yeah.
communist, whatever.
Yeah, he was a socialist, but the coalition included communists, socialists, and like the Radical Party, which is nothing very radical about them. They were old masons and
Okay.
firemen. But yeah, they were the liberals of the 20s.
Okay.
You know,
Sure.
and a couple of like sort of splintered off groups. A couple of
They wear like short sleeve shirts in the 20s, and that was radical. Or
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. Well, they call it radical in the sense that you say liberal in the sense of like the French Revolution sort of liberal, not like liberal American politics, which means Democratic
conservative.
Party,
like,
yeah, yeah, anywhere else in the world is still conservative.
Right.
But so he was like, Allende was pretty much buddies with Fidel. And Allende had been like, he's an old politician. He'd been running for president for decades, you know.
Sure.
And Fidel says, you know, it's never going to work. You know, you got to have an armed revolution. But he wasn't going to train people to make a revolution against Salvador Allende.
Right.
So that there never was that connection until after the coup. And then he started training the resistance.
Mm-hmm.
Because, okay, now, but it was much harder to do that training. You couldn't, during the Pinochet years, you couldn't go to Cuba or come back. You know, people would go to hide and not even
Wouldn't come back.
Yeah. So no, that was a kind of a connection that was never there. It was always in the imagination of the State Department. But
Mm-hmm. It does seem socialism works a lot better as resistance than actually in power.
oh, absolutely, absolutely.
So we're coming towards the end of our time. Well, we went a lot longer than expected. So I usually end by asking people, what was the last great thing you read, the last great thing you saw, connected to Chile or totally unconnected?
Oh, wow. Let's see.
This is to humanize you.
This is to humanize me?
I think you're plenty human.
Well, actually, I might recommend this because people watch Netflix now, right?
Sure.
There's a new Netflix about Chile, about Victor Jara,
Mm-hmm.
who was a folk singer who was taken prisoner by the Pinochet government and killed. And it's like interviews with people who knew him. His widow, who's interestingly an English woman, she's still alive. She's
Oh, really?
a lady. Yeah, she was a dancer and taught dance at the university, and he was like her student, you know, and married her.
Mm-hmm.
And then he was taken away, and she went into exile. But like, so it's a great old documentary. It's not very long on Netflix.
Very cool.
Yeah.
All right, let's give that a watch.
Okay.
All right, well, this is fun.
Great.
Let's have you back
Yeah.
sometime.
Appreciate it. It's a pleasure.
Thank you.